You've spent hours, maybe days, crafting a deadly, heart-pounding dungeon. You've got pit traps, vampires and ghouls, and a world-ending evil sealed at the very bottom. But what happens the second your players get a paper cut? They run back to the first empty room, barricade the door, and take an 8-hour nap. Just like that, the desperate struggle to survive turns into a string of easy fights, with everyone fully healed and every spell slot back. All the tension you built, gone. The dungeon just feels fake. Look, we've all been there. There's a massive disconnect between the high-stakes adventure in our heads and the reality of our players having basically infinite resources. It turns your dungeon into a casual stroll instead of a desperate struggle. In this video, I'm going to show you the one mechanic you're probably not using that'll fix all of this. It's the hidden engine that turns a lazy walkthrough into a nail-biting adventure, and it's way simpler than you think. The real problem is that without a clock, the dungeon has no real risks. When players can take a long rest after every other fight, the whole idea of resource management goes out the window. The warlock always has their best spells. The cleric is never out of healing. The wizard is a walking nuke at all times. This doesn't just make your dungeon feel phony, it guts the strategy from the game and makes certain character classes feel less special. The stakes just vanish. This leads to two huge problems in dungeon design: infinite healing and infinite safety. Infinite healing means players never have to make the hard choices. Infinite safety means they can search every single square inch of a room without a single consequence because, hey, what's the rush? I mean, there's no clock, there's nothing. They can spend hours, they can spend days, even weeks inside your dungeon, and the world outside, and the threats inside, they don't seem to notice or care. The guys who invented this game knew this was a problem. Gary Gygax himself said that strict time records are essential for a meaningful campaign. Without them, you get these weird plot holes. How are hit points just magically coming back? What are the people in the nearby town doing? What about the other monster factions in the dungeon? What are they doing while the party camps for a week in a supply closet? When you don't track time, the world feels static and, more importantly, unbelievable. Your dungeon stops being a living, breathing place and just becomes a series of disconnected fight scenes. So, here's how we can fix this. The solution is to start tracking time, not in a tedious second-by-second way, but with a simple framework that creates urgency and tension. This is the heart of old-school D&D, and it's what makes those games so challenging and rewarding. Tracking time forces players to make meaningful choices. Do we risk searching this room for hidden treasure? Or do we need to push on before our torches burn out? This whole thing rests on 3 pillars: a simple turn structure, resources that run out, and the ever-present threat of wandering monsters. First, forget the idea that this is about boring bookkeeping. Just because it's OSR doesn't mean it was math and procedural. We're not tracking every single second. The most common and effective method is what is called the dungeon turn, which is just a 10-minute block of time. This is the standard used in classic editions like Basic Expert and Old School Essentials. Here's how it works. Almost every major thing the party does costs 1 turn. Moving carefully down a new hallway, that's 1 turn, 10 minutes. Deciding to search a room top to bottom for secrets, that costs a turn. Stopping to listen at a door or check a body for loot, you guessed it, 1 turn. Even Gygax suggested that taking a quick breather to bandage wounds after a fight was a 10-minute action. The key is to keep it simple. You don't need a stopwatch. The easiest way is to just make tally marks on a piece of paper, group them in 6s, and once you have a group, an hour has passed and you'll need to rest for 1 turn to avoid penalties. You can use beads and move them from one bowl to another. You can even make one of your players the official timekeeper. Or you can just eyeball it and say, exploring this whole level feels like it takes about 2 hours. Now, a more advanced trick, and this is something I personally use myself, is the overloaded encounter die. This is where a single d6 roll can track multiple things. For example, on a 1, a random encounter happens. On a 2, a torch burns down a bit more. This folds the timekeeping right into the game, so it feels more dynamic and less like accounting. The second pillar is making resources run out, and the most important one in a dark dungeon is light. Your light source is a timer. Torches don't burn forever. Now, a standard torch lasts for about an hour, which is 6 of our dungeon turns. A lantern full of oil might last for 4 hours or so. Suddenly, the light is a critical resource the party has to manage. This creates real, interesting choices. Do we carry the extra weight of more torches and oil, or do we travel light and risk getting caught in the dark? This is what makes a dungeon feel dangerous. In the pitch black, light keeps you from getting ambushed, but it's also a giant glowing sign that tells everyone else where you are. Tracking this is easy. If you're using tally marks for turns, just make a little note. Torch 1, 6 turns. Every time a turn passes, you're one step closer to that torch going out. The overloaded die can handle this too, with a specific number meaning a light source is used up. You could even use a real timer on your phone for a more visceral feel. Set it for about 60 minutes when a torch is lit. When that last turn ticks by and you get to say, your torch sputters and dies, plunging you into absolute darkness. The panic is real. The vulnerability is immediate. They're not all-powerful heroes anymore. They're trapped, blind, and being hunted. That is BX tension. You know what I mean, like BX tension, not B extension. So if this advice is helping you add some much-needed tension to your games, do me a favor and hit that like button. It really helps the channel. And to make this even easier for you, I've put together another free PDF, the Dungeon Turn Tracker. Check it out. You can download it using the link in the description. Now, let's talk about the final piece of the puzzle, the one that gives the ticking clock its teeth. Time is the currency, and wandering monsters are the tax collector. This is the third and most important pillar that makes time matter. The longer the party spends messing around, making noise, or just hanging out, the higher the chance that something finds them. This is what punishes them for doing nothing and stops them from ever feeling completely safe. The classic way to do this is simple. You make a check every 2 or 3 turns, so every 20 or 30 minutes of game time. You roll a d6 and on a 1 a random encounter happens. You can adjust the odds for how dangerous you want the place to feel. In a really deadly dungeon, you might check every single turn. This one simple mechanic completely changes how players act. It messes up their perfect plans. It stops them from taking long rests whenever they want, which makes those abilities feel precious again. It keeps them from mucking about and forces them to be efficient. The dungeon stops being a static map and starts feeling like a dangerous living ecosystem that is actively hostile towards them. And to make this even better, don't just throw monsters at them. Use your wandering monster table to build paranoia. The first time you roll, maybe all they find are fresh tracks or hear a distant roar. Second time, they find a half-eaten corpse. How's that for a wandering monster? The third time, that's when the monsters actually finally show up. This builds suspense and makes the world feel real. The threat isn't just a random die roll anymore, it's a predator that's hunting them. Of course, you need to balance this. You should absolutely have a few truly safe, defensible rooms in your dungeon where the party can rest. But make them rare. Make them something they have to earn, not something they can just take for granted. So, when you put it all together, you have the 10-minute turn, which gives you a simple structure. You have light sources that burn out, giving you a tangible ticking clock. And you have wandering monsters, which are the consequences for letting that clock run too long. These 3 things work together to create a powerful engine of tension. You can track it with tally marks, you can track it with beads, or just hand the job off to a player. The key is to tell your players how it works up front. Let them know that time is a resource in this dungeon and spending it has consequences. They'll stop acting like tourists on a road trip and start acting like a team on a professional expedition. And don't forget to download the free Dungeon Turn Tracker PDF from the description to get started right away. When you start tracking time, your players will start thinking like actual adventurers. They'll weigh risks, and they'll guard their resources, and they'll feel a real sense of urgency. Your dungeon will finally stop feeling like a fake video game level and start feeling like the dangerous, dynamic, and thrilling place you always wanted it to be. The world becomes more believable because it's moving forward, even when the players are standing still. So I want to know, how do you handle time and rest in your games? Let me know your best house rules and tricks down in the comments. And if you want more tips on how to run a more challenging and rewarding game, make sure you subscribe. Thanks for watching.